I'm Mark Bentham.
And I'm Graham Nichols.
And I'm Katie Holloway, and you're listening to Ordinary. How are you both today?
Good. Enjoying the blue skies and sunshine.
It is sunny, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just wearing a t-shirt. And a little thing about it. It's a t-shirt. It's a line of Judah
presumably
t-shirt,
trousers as well. I mean, we only see your top half, but when you say you're just wearing a t-shirt, you know.
Yeah, well, compared to last week where I had a number of layers on because I was cold, I'm feeling much more chirpy today with the sun shining, and you get a lot of solar gain through that blind there when it's open.
So solar gain?
Yeah, it's when the sun shines into a room and makes the room hotter.
Yeah, nice. I get that in my kitchen. It's lovely.
Yeah.
I saw my first daffodil in the wild at the weekend. Which was nice, as in not one that you bought from a shop, and it made me quite excited.
Just trying to define what the wild is in Haywards Heath.
It was in one of those planters outside the row of shops.
That's really wild.
And it's quite close to a lion as well, but you've got to be careful.
Close to a lion?
In the wild, you know.
Lovely.
It's dangerous in Heath. Maybe
around your end of Haywards Heath.
Definitely around my end.
Wild things around my end, they're not lions. I was just wondering, when did we do our episode on, what do you call a podcast? It is called an episode, isn't it, on a podcast? Yeah. When did we do our one on sung worship? It's been a few weeks, hasn't it? Or a couple of weeks. I was wondering if you'd noticed any difference in the way your congregation is doing its sung worship.
That's a great question. I think the congregation were noticing me, and I had a few comments to say, "Oh, I think you were a bit more expressive," and I was thinking, I don't think I really was, but people kind of see things, and I don't know.
I was leading on Sunday morning, and I was thinking that as we sang one of those songs, and I thought, "Yeah, no, we're not really."
There wasn't any difference.
Including myself, I thought, "Yeah, we're not particularly expressive in terms of like hands or actions. Like we're good, we sing."
I saw a fair bit of movement, and in the end, it's about the sort of the nodding of the head in the right direction. There's all sorts of little ways in which you're showing more attention or less attention. Yeah, that as well. Jigging your head around. Mark is jigging his head around, but nice. it's But yeah, still stuff to work on.
Yeah. One of those songs on Sunday I'd never heard before in my life, so that threw me off a bit. But it was wonderful. I just never heard it.
Gentle and Lowly.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah, we practiced it just before Christmas, one of the kind of open choice services, and I've been meaning to choose it again just so we get it kind of embedded.
Yeah.
So we probably need to have it again.
Stuart and I both loved it, but we'd never heard it before.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go. Fun. Talking of new things, that's a sort of a smooth segue. We're talking technology today. Specifically social media type technology, and even more specifically with a kind of a parenting slant to it. Just come off the back of conversations I've had with a group of women. Not that it's a women's issue, but it's conversations we keep coming back to. So we thought it'd be really helpful to chat about it. Yeah. To start with, maybe Graham, you could just answer this briefly. If people are listening and they're thinking, well, I don't have kids, or my kids are grown up, or something like that, why should they still listen? How is what we're going to talk about still be relevant to them?
I think for a number of reasons. At the very simplest level, just being aware is helpful in that you can pray for church more broadly in church families. But I think more than that, a lot of us have relatives. We interact with technology ourselves. We have relatives who interact with technology, whether they're grandchildren or nieces and nephews, or other sort of connections that we have. And so it's important, I think, to understand that world, social media and gaming, really, which is all kind of a piece, really. So not so much the gaming itself, but the social aspects of the gaming and the interaction of the gaming. I think it's just really helpful to be aware of it, because it's culturally very significant. So we'd want as Christians to be well informed, and to think about our own habits and think about how we can influence children and grandchildren and other relatives, and pray for each other.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
So don't switch off.
Yeah, stay listening, and we'll have a big announcement at the end.
Don't drift your social media now.
Yeah. Disclosure, we don't have any big announcements. Or do we? You'll find out if you listen. What are the main issues in this area then? There's a whole topic of like technology, social media and stuff like that. Why is it something that Christians especially need to engage with? Like, is it really a big deal, or can we just carry on?
Yes, no. I mean, like, it is a big deal. I was just trying to think, technology is good. Social media is good. There's lots of good about it. There are lots of things to worry about as well about it. And I think, like on all these things, in the end of the day, it's our heart and parenting kids' hearts and how they respond to social media and how they deal with social media. And so actually, if you just seek to go for the behaviour, you'll never win this battle, and it'll always become an issue. So you've got to set it in the right context. So as soon as you start seeing social media is just wicked, evil, and I've got to ban it and get rid of it, you're on kind of a hiding to nothing because it's everywhere. So you've got to find a way of parenting to the heart whilst putting in sensible restrictions and behaviours to protect kids whilst they learn that. So, which makes it, I think, just really hard. And there's addictive elements to it. The kids are intoxicated by it. It's how they do a lot of their conversing with their friends. So there's just so many aspects to it that make it really quite a hard area to navigate.
Yeah. What are the main dangers we should be aware of? So if you're speaking to somebody, maybe somebody who's older, whose kids grew up before that, or someone like me whose kids are not at that level yet, what are the main dangers we should be aware of?
I think just to, I'll answer that in a sec, but just to rebuild on Mark's point a little bit more about the protection in place, is that in the same way that we wouldn't put our kids in a car below a certain age, not because we think cars are bad. Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm not being very clear today at all, am I? Yes.
I was thinking, I definitely drove my newborns home from the hospital in a car.
Wouldn't put them in a car to drive. Mark knew what I was saying, but I wasn't saying what I was thinking. We wouldn't put our kids in a car to drive the car without them getting to a reasonable age and having a reasonable amount of training and so on. It was very interesting. I was listening to the head of Ofsted the other day, who was basically saying, don't give your primary school kids a smartphone, period, because they felt that all the research would show that they don't have the categories, the capability, the maturity to be able to drive that car at that age. So I think that as part of our responsibility as parents is just to recognise that, in common grace, there's been lots of studies done and a general acceptance that it's hard enough as you're a young adult and an older adult, let alone if you're a child, being discerning about it. So I think the dangers include addiction, in the sense of being sort of so taken with something that you're kind of checking out of other bits of life. Then there's the danger of forming or building relationships which are not particularly helpful. There's the danger of being an abuser or being abusive. Being abused in some way or other through that sort of medium. And there's one that popped into my head and went out again. Perhaps Mark can think of another one while I'm thinking of the one I forgot.
Well, just the fact that it does distract.
Yeah.
You lose the ability, the way in which it draws them in and engages means that they become distracted often, unable to focus for lengthier periods of time because they've kind of so trained themselves to be able to read in short bites. All the things you read about, you actually begin to observe that things become harder. And we all know what it's like. You lose time just by kind of surfing the web or checking your social, whatever feed you're on. They're all kind of the softer end of dangers, but there's still a reality.
The one that popped in and went out was that what you value, you start to value affirmation in some kind of social media context, whether it's just a very big WhatsApp group or something that you might be in, through to the more sort of mainstream big social media networks. It starts to change your system of values. So what becomes valuable to you is the seeing stuff, but particularly the stuff you post being valued.
Yeah.
Breeds discontentment within your own heart.
Yeah.
Because you're observing stuff that is happening that you're not part of and you wish you were part of.
Yeah.
Or it breeds judgmentalism in you. You're observing stuff and you think you're superior because you're not involved in that stuff and others are involved in that stuff. So it has all these kind of softer sides, but as dangerous.
Is the fact that there's this constant feedback loop as well, is that part of it that could be a danger? When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, like MSN Messenger was the thing, but it wasn't, smartphones weren't around till I was at uni, or even, towards the end of my time at uni. So at least then I was engaging in lots of this stuff, but at least it wasn't constant all the time. But now teenagers just got it 24/7 on their phones. Is that part of it as well?
I think, by the way, I think MSN Messenger was the first app that did the Graham is typing thing.
Yeah. Oh, was it?
I think that was the first app that did that, which is, and I didn't, at the time, you just thought, oh, that's interesting, that's new. Because obviously for an email or for an old-fashioned text message, you could never tell whether the other person was typing. And then a little bit later, you realise, oh, yeah, they do that because it draws you in, because you're always waiting to see, once you see someone typing, you're going to wait there until the message comes through.
I remember that so well, especially if there's a boy you liked in your class and they're typing and then they stop typing and they start all these mind games you didn't get when it was a quill and a piece of parchment.
Yeah.
You just have to wait.
It's made me lose the question now because I just got so excited about that a little bit. But it's a well-known trigger, not a trigger, more well-known thing that draws you in.
Yeah, it didn't cross my mind that that's the reason for that.
Yeah, that's why it's there. It's not because it's helpful information. It's to keep you on the conversation.
Yeah, and maybe that's a part of it as well, like the control or the way that the software developers have control over your mind. That sounds more sinister than I meant it to, but they can manipulate your behaviours with these things, the psychology of it as well, which is worrying for me, but for my children, it especially makes me feel wary.
But they're noting the psychological issues that are arising from it. So actually kids, although they are more connected than ever, they feel more alone than ever. They're isolated, so they're always connected, but they're not actually in the sense of having those relationships because they're all either at the very superficial level, or they're just so connected in a phone world. But there's no depth to it. And so they speak of great aloneness for kids, teenagers. And actually what's happening as well is even in the family situation is you're seeing, parents distracted. So, they come in home, they want conversations and dad's on the phone and dealing with his email, or he's sending a message. I find my own self just, like you're standing around, you pull your phone out your pocket and you start scrolling the news, the football gossip, whatever it is, because it becomes so habitual and and distracts you from life around. So, I think all of these are areas. Yeah.
And I don't think either of you touched on, but the potential to access content that's not suitable.
Yeah.
Whether it's straight up pornography or even just lower down the scale, the stuff that you don't want your kids engaging with.
But, and who they've been influenced by. So our school recently sent home a whole email warning us of the influence of Andrew Tate, and how his impact is influencing behaviour in the school and thinking in the school.
Yeah, I don't know, but who's that? What's that?
Andrew Tate. I think that's the name of the guy, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a social media influencer. There's a whole interesting thing you could do about Andrew Tate because he's tapped into something which is the masculinity, basically, and the fact that boys, particularly, and young men feel like they don't know what their place is anymore because they're always kind of being told, particularly white males, are just bad.
Yeah,
in any form of masculinity, and toxic masculinity is a kind of word for masculinity now. So any kind of masculinity. So he's tapped into that with lots of really unhelpful, genuinely misogynistic, and promoting sort of violence against women and so forth. So that is all really bad. I mean, there's a great irony, and there's loads of other influences that the school would never write home about, which are probably as bad or worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is a thing. It is a bad
interesting
thing.
that the influence of someone like that through the YouTube and through what he's promoting, and it's exactly what Graham said. It's because it's filling a, they've heard somewhere else, that it's so negative to be a boy that suddenly now it's being fed the other way and it's gone to the other extreme. But that's the power of social media, in both directions.
Yeah. Okay, those are some of the things to be aware of then. So let's, at a high level, what are some principles that can help as we seek to be wise with this without getting into real details? Maybe Graham, you can start us off. Some high level principles.
Never give your child a phone until they're 18.
I genuinely, that's what I think now.
Just don't do it.
Oh yeah, I was in a context with you where you were saying you'd hope your sons listen to this, although they tell me they don't. But you'd rather have held off longer before giving them smartphones.
Yeah, definitely.
Was what you'd sort of concluded.
I was going to ask about that, but as we're here now, what do you reckon on that? My husband and I think we want to try and hold off on no smartphones till they're 16. But is that realistic?
I'm not sure that's realistic, but certainly till secondary school. 100% I would say till secondary school.
We gave year 6, so top end of primary school, but they had no social media apps. So they weren't allowed on Instagram, WhatsApp.
They were smartphones, they just weren't allowed to use. Yeah,
they were smartphones, but they were very old smartphones. They were like second, third hand-me-down kind of things from wider family. And for one of my boys, it wasn't. They just weren't that bothered until much later. Yeah. Another one, it was much more, in terms of reading sport news more. But I think we held off the apps until they were 13, 14. And if I could hold off longer, the older they've got, the more they've been influenced by the social media, by Instagram, by Snapchat, by these ones, because that's how they communicate, and B, it's how they get their news, both sport and largely sport.
I mean, that's the transformation between, I was talking about MSN Messenger, which, in a way, was almost as advanced as WhatsApp. That with other communications, it's the miniaturization of it, which has been the massive thing, down to small devices, phones and tablets and so on, which wasn't your experience growing up, I don't think. Having those devices, so some of the sort of seeds of all the apps were there. And Facebook is pretty old. I can't remember quite how many years, but
I had Facebook when I was doing my A-levels. So So it wasn't same
so
age
much
as your middle son, I believe, if that helps.
So it wasn't so much that they weren't around. It was that they weren't miniaturized and so ubiquitous everywhere. That kind of everywhere present and at all times available, sort of day and night. So it's really hard to work out. I think that the best ways to control, I think that combination of limiting and advising is a parental challenge. Limiting as in, drop dead sort of limits of various kinds, whether it's not give them a smartphone or not let them operate at certain places or whatever you decide to do. So there's those kind of hard limit stuff. And then there's the soft stuff to do with encouraging them, making them accountable in some way, encouraging them to think through it, and so on. What they're using the time.
I mean, it's worth saying you're fighting not just on one level, the desire to withhold. You're fighting the pressure that they feel and what they want. Their mates have got it, but they want it. And they want it for a variety of reasons. They want it because they want to be able to communicate, connect with their friends. They want it because they desire it. There's just a want to be in kind of. And so you're kind of having to resist both that that sense of cultural pressure of even those around you who are saying, no, it's fine, it's not a problem, the world that says this is not an issue, and the pressure from your own children who say, I would like this, I want this, my friends have it, my friends have, it is a battle. And then once they've got it, it's training them, and it's a perennial conversation in our household, about talking about phone use, how we do that. And, there are guidelines that, there are rules within the house in terms of where you have your phone and where you keep your phone overnight. But it's a constant, because not because necessarily intentionally, just in their pockets, or that, all those, it is a constant conversation. And the school gives them iPads. So you have to use iPads for their schooling, which then in turn they sync with their phones. They're getting messages from their teachers. It's not a straightforward. Plus, on the other side of it, you've got to teach them, because they live in a world where this is absolutely dominant. Yeah. So I've got to instruct them on how to do this well and wisely, and in a way that honours.
Yeah, my daughter's in year 2, and already they're learning how to use iPads at school. And interestingly, she said to me, the first lesson on iPads was there are rules about the iPad. And I thought, lovely, they're going to teach you only go on what you're told to use, only use it for this amount of time, make sure you don't tap on anything other than... But it wasn't. It was about, don't drop it, make sure it's always in the case, don't put a drink near it. So I was like, that was not the iPad rules I hoped they were going to instill. Yeah. I've heard of people who draw up like contracts with their kids, like not just about you're allowed to make. I guess it's different now. It's about phone calls and stuff, because it's all unlimited, isn't it? And data. But contracts are like, you're allowed to use it for this. You're allowed to do this, this, and this, and have these. I don't know exactly what, but is that a helpful thing, or will they just find loopholes?
We did it. I had a contract, and the rule still is, in effect, the phones are mine and Roz's, they're not the boys. So there's an understanding that we own the phone, therefore I have the right to access it and search it, all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And do you?
Not probably as regularly as I do, but I do. Yeah, I do check their phones.
You think that's a good principle as a parent?
It's a good principle, but of course the truth is that there are so many ways. I mean, we have all the things you can do on it, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, limit the social media content. You can block the nasty stuff coming in to a degree, but if they really want to do it, they'll find a way. I'm not saying my boys are, but they'll find a way of doing it. And the reality is, it is what they say. You are always playing slight catch up, in how that works. And I think, like all things, we go through seasons. But the older my boys get, there's also the line of the privacy, and how they're relating to their friends and what that looks like. So, I'm not really wanting to read all their messages, because there is a level of privacy. But I do want to be checking their phone for unhelpful content, what they're kind of watching through their Instagrams and through their social media. What are they generally looking at?
I guess there are like different approaches to this. So you could be the kind of the parent who I guess is what I'm like now, but I'm there now because it's a while until I have to deal with it, but where you say, no, you're holding off, you're not having anything for as long as possible, nothing at all for as long as possible. Or then there's, I guess, the different approach of which is maybe more like what you've done, where you give them access to things maybe earlier, but there are limits and conversations and ongoing conversations and things. Are there like pros and cons to each approach, do you think?
I guess if you could equip them at age 10 to be completely disciplined and mature enough, that would be an advantage. So obviously at any age, the more they're able to self-regulate, the better. In a way, the advantage of a very strict regime is that it's easy to operate. It makes you feel like you're in control as a parent. The disadvantage of that is it doesn't teach them to self-regulate. So yeah, I suppose that's the advantage and disadvantages. I think, by the way, to do with controls, there's other things like they may be rules or they may just be encouragements to say you have a no phones at the table rule for eating together, which hopefully happens at the table, or you really try and encourage when you're watching something together that you don't use devices at the same time.
Yeah.
And you have to model that as an adult, because it's really, if something's sort of half interesting and you're watching something with 2 or 3 other people, there is a kind of temptation to look at your phone and maybe catch up on messages or something at the same time. But that's not really modeling very, very present behavior for your kids.
Yeah.
So I think little things, whether you call them rules or just sort of social pressure you put on your children to be present when they're present.
That's really helpful.
So I think those all help.
I agree. I think that they're all. I think trying to be very strict on this on one level is virtually important, because they're outside of your household the whole time, and even the best monitoring stuff, there are ways around it. They'll find a way around. Or they'll find something. So I think it has to be about the conversations. It has to be about modelling, and it has to be about asking their heart questions. Why do you want this? What is it you're wanting from these kind of things? And it seems we go through it seems to be always a question discussion. And probably like lots of parents, we go through tight array days and not so tight days, and days when it feels like everything's about it, and days when you're kind of you're not. I'm not on it, as a dad. So you kind of it's just like any of the other parenting issues, but I think you've got to take it seriously. I think it's not something you can just ignore and not worry about. I think you've got to be thinking, and you've got to be tackling it. And it's a good prompt to me just to keep being spurred on to keep going with it.
Yeah.
I think keep going is the thing, in that it's not a one-off where you could say, okay, I've done that topic now with them, or I've got those controls in place and that's it. I think you do have to have the hard conversations, not every day, but you have to have them regularly. And go back to people and go back to your children. I was thinking of other people's children at that point. Go back to your children or your grandchildren and have those conversations, not just to say here's another rule, but to just talk to them about it and around it. And sometimes it's the really hard conversations about what kinds of stuff are you looking at, but it may just be how are you finding it, or just trying to find a way in of talking a bit about it. I know it all sounds a bit clunky with parents or grandparents talking about the kind of stuff, but I think often our children will welcome some help, because they may well be struggling in some way themselves and feel a little bit either addicted or a bit drawn in or even a bit intimidated by it, and would sometimes welcome the help more than you might think.
Yeah, I know how it makes me feel sometimes. If I post something and 2 people like it and everyone else has ignored it, even in things like your family WhatsApp group, you post something, you think that's funny and no one responds. Like, even as an adult, it does affect you. So I guess for young people, it must be, even more, and it's constant. What would you do now, Graham? Because your kids are grown up now and grew up, well, they're my age. If your kids were like 10 now, what principle would you act on?
I think I'd just behave exactly like Mark is. I think I would follow that bit of advice about not giving them a smartphone. They were mobile phones when our kids were growing up, and we held off as long as we could giving them mobile phones, not for quite the same reasons. But yeah, all the things we talked about, really. I don't think I'd do anything different. I think just because I'm aware of the more opportunities, the conversations I'll be having would be slightly different now. I think I'm encouraging my children to think about their children and devices they use and so on. It's probably worse as a grandparent because, in a way, I don't know about worse as a grandparent. You can see some of the dangers, but also sometimes they work to your advantage in that sometimes entertaining grandchildren is quite a benefit.
You mean it's easier to entertain them as a grandparent?
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
if you give them devices to play on and so on.
I see. Yeah.
So you end up becoming sort of a bit lazy about that sort of thing. But also, as a grandparent or as a different relative, or even just as a friend in the church, you can sometimes have conversations that are not quite as heated as they are between parents and children.
Yeah.
So I'm not answering your question now about what I do with my children over and again, but there's lots of. I think, I could have probably a conversation with Mark's children or my children's children about stuff in a way that's not going to instantly escalate in quite the same way, just because it's a slightly different relationship.
Because you're not laying down the rules in their life.
And I think actually that's one of the most helpful things as a parent of teenager is other adults within the life of the church speaking into your kids' lives. You can't underestimate them just hearing it, having a conversation because the heat is out, and them hearing it from in a slightly different way. They're all positives.
Yeah.
And in those ways, I would encourage and model it. I think that on a Sunday morning or a Sunday evening, just being careful. I know often people use their phones for reading the Bible, but actually, if you're on your phone during the service, they notice. Kids notice. Yeah. It is worth. The stress in all of this is that there are good things. For example, there is a massive thing in the fact that my kids have phones, and when they're out and about, I can contact them.
Yeah.
And the apps that allow you to see where everyone is, kind of within the fact. That's a good thing in lots of ways. It has a massive downside. It means that the kids are they never have that sense of, which I do when you're a kid and you go to a city and you suddenly realise you are all alone. You've got to work out how to get home unless you have 10p in your pocket and phone. There's always instant help. You just phone up and say, hey, Dad, I'm stuck, or Dad, this is happening. What do I do? You don't work it out, but there's a blessing to that.
Yeah.
So it's not to see all the negatives. There's lots of good in technology that is allowing and opening up stuff that enables them to do it.
Yeah, and good in that they might be looking at good stuff on social media.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
might be learning stuff they wouldn't otherwise learn. They might be engaging with their friends helpfully and usefully.
Yeah.
Through those means, and lots of good stuff gets promoted on social media as well as lots of rubbish. So it's not all bad from that reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it's also just keep things simple as well. Do all the basic things. Like don't let them. I mean, they're never black and white rules. But you don't want screens in your bedrooms. But then they have to do their homework. But then you want them out of their bedrooms when they're not doing their homework. You want doors open. You want just all the simple things that we all know that we wouldn't ever. Just keep persevering in it. Yeah. Doing the simple things, having the conversations.
Are there other lessons wrapped up in this that might be helpful as well? Things like peer pressure, all your friends have a smartphone but you don't have one. Like, is that an opportunity to teach our kids that as Christians we're different, and that's like it's okay to be different? Is that a good opportunity for that, or is this just a bigger issue and we don't need to drag that into it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you are asking them to sacrifice certain things.
Yeah.
And you've got to model that again yourself. But it's whether this is a hill to die on in terms of make them make this sacrifice. I think it certainly is up to a point, but it's whether you think it's so damaging and so distinctive not to have one that you would say this is a point of principle where you're going to have to suffer because it's so important that you don't have one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could carry that argument.
Because it's a bit like the Halloween thing, which we've done with our kids, say, actually, you are not celebrating this. We are different as Christians. And that's good. And I think that is helpful that they miss out, but they know that you as a Christian, it's different. But come 1st of November, everyone's forgotten that it's all right. But smartphones is a bit more every day.
Yeah, and you might have better classify it in the same way. Where Halloween,
Yeah.
you could say in terms of it's rather murky history, complicated history, but in terms of the practice, there are things that you object to. Whereas with the smartphones thing, it's more about the use than the actual principle.
Yeah.
I think with it, it's and I know I'm broke a record, but if you make the phone the enemy, you're on a losing side. At the end of the day, it is what they want in their heart desire, and the phone is just revealing that. And so you can take away the phone, but the heart will still be there. It will just find it in different ways and reveal it in different other aspects. Now, the phone has particular dangers that you've got to work out, but I think it just affords also opportunity to talk and have conversations about stuff.
Yeah.
And taking away a mobile phone from a kid, teenage school, there will be a stigma attached.
For sure. Yeah. What I'm hearing then from you both is just keep having conversations with them about it all the time. You agree? Like
all day, every day.
All day, every day. You're not allowed to talk about anything else.
I think it's true about lots of things, though.
Yeah.
But having communication channels.
Yeah. I'm feeling challenged myself, actually, that I'm not on my phone when I could be just chatting to my kids about anything.
Yeah.
I could be watching Bluey with them again.
I mean, look, if I had my way, I would ban all phones, but, including my own. But, that's not the world we live in. And it is a case of parenting wisely in that, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, what do we say then to the person who's listening, who's worrying it's too late? Their kids have already got smartphones and tablets and all this stuff, and they're worried that they don't have enough rules, or they don't know really what their kids do with it, and they're concerned it's too late. What can we say to them?
It's too late. It's actually too late.
Well, it's too late to say no, you can't have one because they've got one, and they're worried it's too late to start putting some rules in place because they haven't had them yet.
Yeah, I think it's all right with lots of things with your children. It's all right to say, I think we made a mistake. I think, rather dramatically snatching a phone out of a kid's hand that you just gave it a week ago and saying, I'm putting it back in the box and setting it back, maybe misunderstood and not quite the right reaction. But I think it's okay to say, I listened to this podcast, or more likely, I thought about it carefully myself. Yeah. And I think I made a mistake either giving it to you or giving it to you in an unlimited way. And we need to talk about this. I'm not going to take it away from you, but we need to backtrack a little bit and think about some rules. And you need to be open with me about kind of what you're watching at. This is because I love you and I care for you, and I want you to develop good social relationships, not harmful ones. So I think having those conversations is okay. It's honest to say, as a parent, I think I made a mistake. It's all right.
Yeah,
it happens every day as a parent, I think.
Never believe the lie. It's too late. I think that's one of the lies that the devil just loves to say, and tells us parents it's too late. It's not actually. Actually, whilst they're still at home, there's always, and with the power of the gospel and the grace of Jesus, I can bring about change. It might be hard. But we can, and actually just talking into these things and talking to our kids about them, being open about it with them, where we've got it wrong, where we've struggled, asking to reset, making steps forward. Even if they're 17, go for it. It would be a different conversation from a 13-year-old, but there's still conversations to be had, and there's still things that can be done.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's helpful. Listeners, let us know what you think. Like if you're listening and you've got further questions or comments or thoughts, we'd love to hear what you think. Maybe we can talk about some of these issues again another time, or some related things. You can always email us ordinary@cchh.org.uk. And I think that's it for today. We will not be here next week. We're having the week off to luxuriously bask in the sunshine for half term. And we'll be back after that with a new episode. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.